typing in the chat.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Um, there are a couple of announcements. The first is the deadline for the South Dakota All Awards is tomorrow. So please check the website for more information on southdakotall.org and watch your email for further Summer Summit information. We're using GoToMeeting today. There's a place to ask questions, and in the comments section, we will also be posting some links to use during this training. At the top of the screen is a view who's talking. You can customize who and what you view in this section. If you're having trouble streaming, if you have streaming issues during this, I would suggest turning off your camera and possibly hiding everyone to conserve your bandwidth. And you can do that up in the view who's talking. You have access to your microphone and camera by hovering your mouse at the bottom of the screen. Please mute yourself during Tracy's presentation until she asks for feedback. And now, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy because we don't want to lose her battery.
Great to see you guys. Thank you again. This is the third in a series, and I have to tell you that I've just had the best time. I wish I could see you all in person. I just have the deepest respect for what you do and how you do it. It's a passion of mine to help those who help others. And today we're going to talk about from crisis to clarity. So this is one of my favorite presentations because you can do this in a group. You can do this with people you're working with. If you're an administrator, an employee, you can take some of these concepts and use them with your staff. And most importantly, though, today, similar to the very first presentation I gave, this is really about you. So what I want you to think about today, I know you all have pieces of paper and pens and pencils because you are teachers, administrators, so you have that. I would like you to jot down today things that you are going to follow up on. I would like you to take some of these concepts. If they resonate with you, jot it down, because toward the end of our presentations, we're going to put some of these concepts into action and you'll have a good list going. And while we're in the chat right now, and I'll kind of call it out at the end, but you know, we're in a global pandemic. I think that word is being overused. If I hear it again, I think it'll probably be, I don't know, it's one of those things like wheelhouse and some of those words that are really annoying to you after a while. But really, I like to think of crisis as a time, you know, in our lives where it forces us to look at, are we doing what we want to do? Are we living with meaning and purpose, or are we letting life live us? We are already busy as Americans. We have our kids in every sport. We have family obligations. The more resource rich you are, sometimes the more responsibilities you have. And are we really the master of our day, of our week, or is it becoming the masters of us? And so one of the best things that can happen to us is sometimes a crisis happens. Sometimes it's a global pandemic. Sometimes it's the loss of a relationship. It's a death. It's somewhere in there. And any time a crisis comes, we have a chance to ask ourselves, what is important to me? And sometimes we're just forced to pare down. I think we all have been forced to pare down. We've been sent to our homes. We've been told to homeschool our kids and work 40 hours a week. We've been told to keep a responsive team and all these things. And we're really discovering our limits. And we're also discovering, like, is this life-giving to me? So I just would like you to think for a moment, has there been any silver linings for you? And put it in the chat. What has this COVID-19, let's use this as an example, what has this brought to you that's been good? And have you had a chance to really reflect on that? What are some of the blessings? And if you think about it, jot it down on your paper or throw it into the chat. I know for myself, and talking to therapy clients and looking at my colleagues and even my book club, I have never had an excuse before to sit at home with my family and keep them physically safe and have a moment to think, what if this was all gone? What if I didn't have my health? What if I didn't have those I love? And that really brought me to a point of feeling very blessed about what I have with my family, with my friends. It really brought me into deep connection with that. And it also brought me a sense of my own mortality. I think we get so busy that we think we're invincible and that nothing's going to happen. And that was a real blessing, kind of a silver lining. So throw it on your paper. Think about your blessings as we go through this and what you're seeing as a result. Are you doing anything different because of that realization? Are you thinking about doing anything different? Well, now is the time to think about that. Okay, I want to just talk a little bit about what happens when we get into a crisis. We know students like this. Remember we talked last week, for those of you who joined me last week, about the crisis brain. Now, I talked a lot about our high crisis students, especially those struggling in the crisis of poverty, but many of us lead high crisis lives as well. And while we have resource-rich environments that maybe our brains aren't changed to that degree, our brains do change to compensate to the life we live, and our bodies do pay for the stress we have, and we do respond to stress in a certain way. So you can really, crisis gives us the chance to say, how do I normally react to crisis? This is the time to sit down, and this is a good thing to jot down. How do I normally respond? Think about how you responded initially to COVID-19 and to changes in work and to changes in that. Which way did you go? Did you look out and focus completely on everything you were losing? Did your anxiety go through the roof, and has it stayed higher than pre-COVID-19? Did you retreat? Did you withdraw? Did you feel that sense of nothing's going to be the same and really regret and mourn these losses? Or did you go through that little period, because we all have to grieve, and then move toward growth and what we call resilience? Your answer to this question really reveals your relationship between loss and opportunity. We are going to experience losses in any crisis. If you have a divorce, if you have a death, if you have a job change, a job loss, people are losing their businesses. But what is the opportunity, and how do we move from grieving that loss to looking at this to a point of growth and resilience? I think we have to look backwards to see how we go forward. If we typically stay on this anxiety and retreat side, what can we do to move us forward? The things I'm going to talk about today are going to help us move forward. We're going to try to capture the crisis. We're going to capture our feelings of grief and loss. We're going to try to move through those or deal with those as they come, but we're always going to keep our mind focusing on the opportunities. Now, remember in the first webinar I did with reframing up, we know that if we change our thoughts and we consistently work on stopping negative thoughts, on replacing them, on being aware of our emotional state, we can actually over time change those to be focused on more of the positive things and positive outcomes, and our behavior will change, right? So we're going to release our hold on loss and embrace our relationship with opportunity. It's very fitting to say that if we start thinking about life as a classroom, right, where most of you work, and shifting what I can control, that I can control what happens to, I can control how I react. No matter what happens in this classroom of life, I can control how I react to it. I can still have all the negative feelings. I can still process things. I can wallow a little bit, but I can move forward, and I will move forward. What is this meant to teach me? If life is a classroom, what is COVID-19 meant to teach me in my own unique circumstances, in my own place right now, in my own classroom, in my own playground, right? I can't always change the things that happen to me, but I can change my reaction. Both practically, what can I do? We're going to look at some of these hippy-dippy ideas I'm giving you from psychology really need to be rooted in very practical things, right? If you can do all the meditation you want, but if you don't carve out time to do it and make a practice and make it work for you and make it unique for you, if you don't have space and time to do it, which is a practical thing, then it won't work, right? You have to have both the practical and the emotional and have them come together. Another question from life as a classroom is, what skills do I want? What skills do I wish I would have had, or have I found out I need now based on, for example, COVID-19. How do I wish I was more prepared? And what can I focus energy into doing that? Now let's think about that practically. Many of us will say financially, right? I mean, this crisis is hitting everybody at every level financially. We all can look and say, boy, if I would have had that 6 months emergency fund, I would have had a lot less anxiety. Boy, if I would have had plan B for my business, boy, if I would have only done A, B, and C for education, I would be open to new jobs right now, right? So what is it that I need to have for the next crisis? And what can I commit to working on right now that will keep me better prepared? Now, what do I want in my emotional toolbox? What did I find out about myself? Maybe it wasn't pretty. Maybe I found out that I was a wreck and crabby and irritable and nobody wanted to talk to me. Maybe I found out I have an aversion to Zoom meetings. I think I found that out. And maybe I have found out I have an aversion to these long, horrible webinars that my boss makes me have, you know. How can I better prepare for that? You know, maybe I can learn how to engage a little bit more. Maybe I can help create content for these webinars. Maybe I can weed out the crazy people, right? And then again, what is it too that I want for my life? Remember how we talked about self-care. You are living the life that you're going to have. Nobody, not even me, although wouldn't that be funny if I did? Nobody's going to come knocking on your door and say, hey, hey, Rhonda Lip, I noticed you're not taking care of yourself and that you're letting your job get really stressful, and I'm here to help you with that. Let's get going on this. Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe that's a new job idea for me. Would you like me to just show up at your doorstep and say, hey, we're doing this, right? But nobody is going to do this. You have to do it yourself. You are the biggest expert in your own life. And if you are not saying that to your students, you absolutely should. When they're struggling through crisis, as we're going through this today, I want you to jot down on that paper, how can I adapt this concept and bring this into classroom with my students? One thing you can say to them is remind them, listen, you've been through hard times before. You've been through some of the hardest times I've ever heard, and you're going to get through this one. And then you're going to say, how did you get through it when you were in the crisis before? And you're going to help them work through that a little bit, right? Well, you need to ask yourself these questions. If you're really struggling during this current crisis, for example, or any crisis, the first question to ask yourself is, how did I get through crisis before and what worked for me? That's unique for me. And then start from there, right? Growth rarely comes from our comfort zone. You guys have heard this. Growth doesn't happen on the mountaintop of success. It happens in the valley. This is where crisis is really important. We can start reframing crisis as a gift to say, well, I guess I needed the universe to sort of remind me what's important in my life and help me and guide me back to my values. Thinking of this time and reframing it in your mind of the classroom of life is giving me a really important test, a really important opportunity to learn. And for many of us up until now, you know, crisis has been something a little bit smaller. We don't know what this looks like, and that's another thing I talked about. How do you live with the uncertainty of not knowing the depth of this? Practicing inner peace, focusing on what you can control, those will lower anxiety. Oops, I keep scrolling the people, not my slide. Here we go. I want to talk a little bit about resilience. You guys have gotten this from me until you're blue in the face. If you've had trainings with me, I love to talk about resilience because we are inherently resilient. You can tell any of your struggling students, no matter how difficult they are, no matter how many kind of rough or tough choices they make, they are resilient. They keep coming back. They're there. Remember, I talked to you about the student who graduated with his GED that we worked with. It took him 12 years, but he did it. 12 years. He is resilient, right? Everyone's resilient. Resilient people are able to utilize their skills and strengths to cope and recover from problems and challenges. So again, how do we build resilience? Resilience, you're not born with it. It can be learned. Anyone can learn how to do it. Let's drill down on resilience a bit. Here's some factors of resilience. I've compiled what research says are the top factors for resilience. Now, also, what does resilience predict about a person? Resilience over time, if you take these concepts and focus on them as a moment of self-care, you will quickly bounce back from crisis. You will quickly move to that growth and resilience. You will spend less time in anxiety and retreat. You will lower the cortisol and adrenaline and negative stress chemicals in your body, thus prolonging your life, your physical life. You will lower your chance of getting diseases like cancer and all of those things because you have a healthier body. You will have a growth-minded, adapted brain, which will allow you to adapt and respond quickly and effectively in all situations. You will enjoy your life more. You will enjoy those people that you love more. You will enjoy your job more. So this is important. If we were like a weight loss or self-help commercial, you could get all those things just by focusing on these things. Wouldn't that be a great sell? So what are some of these factors? First thing is holding positive views of yourself and your abilities. We can be so hard on ourselves. What's your self-talk like? Now, again, get your piece of paper out. Are any of these hitting a particular chord? Like, oh man, I'm really struggling with this one. What is it that we can do about negative self-talk and holding those positive reviews? You need to look at yourself and look at the wins. We're always looking at what we aren't doing, but what are you doing? You know what you're doing? You're showing up for this. You're listening to this. You're actually thinking about how you might put this into your life. You're getting by. You're taking care of yourself. You're helping people in your field that are the most vulnerable in society. I think that's a pretty big win. Put that down. You're resilient if you have the capacity to make realistic plans and to stick to them. Do you remember, those of you who joined me for our very first series in self-care, we talked about your definition of success. If you are defining success as factors outside of your control, for example, well, as soon as they get a vaccine, I'll feel less anxiety. Oh my gosh. Do you have control over when they're developing a vaccine? No. Are you gonna wait until that happens to not be anxious? That would be pretty tough to do, right? Or as soon as this student passes math, or as soon as this happens. But if our definition of success is, I'm going to go in every single day and be as kind and compassionate as I can. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to see this person in their best light, even if I have to reframe my thoughts to do it. You have a lot of chance to be successful every single day. You're resilient if you have what's called an internal locus of control. Now, we all know people who have external locus of control. Those are the people who say, I can't do this because so and so and so, and I was going to do this, but life just didn't let me, or it's the weather's fault. It's everything is against me, right? That's an external locus of control. You view your success in life as dependent on external factors outside of yourself. Now, if you have an external locus of control, then your idea of success is, I can't succeed unless everybody else succeeds around me. So that's really tough, right? If you have an internal locus of control, you're saying, I control my life. My choices, large in part, my choices make up the quality and value of my life. And I'm responsible for those, and I can work toward those. That's what an internal locus of control is. Being a good communicator is a factor of resilience, because if you can communicate with yourself and have good self-talk, if you can communicate with your boss, if you can communicate with your students in a really great way that's uplifting, that's positive, that's effective, that's clear, right? You have those thought processes in your head, so you're able to formulate goals more quickly and more efficiently, and success is more readily available to better communicators. Is communication something you want to work on? Write it down. There's ways to do that, right? We're going to get to your goals. And of course, viewing yourself as a fighter rather than a victim. We are going to be in situations in the classroom of life where we cannot control everything. We can only control what happens. We can fight for things to change, and they may not always change, but if fighting for what we believe in is our success, we'll be successful. View yourself as a fighter versus something that always happens and somebody that's always weak and vulnerable, or a survivor, somebody who's gotten through something, who's been victimized and then came out of it. That's a much more powerful way to view yourself, and it builds resilience. Next one is high emotional intelligence. This is really just emotional regulation. This is what our students struggle with the most. This is what we sometimes struggle with when we're very stressed out. We need to learn how to manage our feelings. My kids, my clients, people I work with, my staff, they're going to put this on my tombstone. Feelings are not facts. okay? Feelings are not facts. Say it with me. Maybe you want to write it down. It's a really good one to throw at your kids. How many times do we get up every single day and do things we don't feel like doing? I said this in my self-care. We cannot base important values and goals and things we want to accomplish in life by what we feel like in the moment. And isn't that what our clients and what our students struggle with the most? They are always making decisions based on their feelings and assessments because they're putting out fire to fire to fire, right? And then they're on a hamster wheel. They're on a hamster wheel that they can't get off of. So we have to manage those feelings and do things despite how we feel. We can work through goals even if we're not feeling like it. How many of you exercised today? I wish I could see a show of hands. I'm not raising my hand. My heart rate did get up when the power went out though, so I'm going to count that. I hope my Fitbit like registered that. But I did not exercise today. But how many of you actually felt like exercising? You know, we do things for the long term, and the same is with our emotions. Are we basing our goals and our values on how we're feeling at the moment? I fall in and out of love with my husband like a billion times. And if I divorced him every time he annoyed me, we'd have been divorced a long time ago, right? Feelings are not facts. We need to work through feelings in order to master our larger goals and have joy and purpose in our life. So let's talk about goals and values. I've thrown them out there, and I want to sort of get you guys thinking about a couple of things. So when we think about values, there's very few places in life where somebody sits down with you and says, hey, Andrew, I'm only calling out the first few people I can see on the Zoom chat. So I see Andrew right there. He's got his face on there. So, okay. How many people just walk into your room and say, you know, Andrew, let's sit down and talk about what your values are? You know, where in your life does that happen? Is your boss saying that to you? Generally not. Is your spouse interviewing you about your values? Generally not. In therapy, we do that a lot. I mean, in therapy, we get people to sort of drill down on that. But what about asking yourself this question? What are your values? Values are your principles, your ethics, your standards, and your morals that guide your actions or should guide your actions and your choices in daily life. Your values are what bring about your feelings of self-worth and your purpose in life. And if you think about the difference between values and goals, goals are the milestones that by working toward them, you express and live out your values. So if you think about values as a compass, I want my life to go in this direction, and this is what I value. I value service. I value education. I value family. I value knowledge and skill. I value honesty. I value spirituality. It's a compass driving you to the life you want, and goals are the little things that you should be doing daily that actually express that larger vision of your life. So if we have this definition to work with, what do we need to do with this? A big portion in a crisis. Remember, a crisis forces us or gives us the opportunity. Which one do you want to say? Words are important. I say gives us the opportunity, right, Andrew? Okay. Gives us the opportunity to look at and examine our values. Are we really living them out and expressing them in what we're doing every day? Now, part of accepting and acceptance into action, accepting that we're in a crisis, accepting that we want to make some changes. Let's look at what we do. Going from acceptance to action means I'm going to accept this current situation. I cannot control COVID-19. I cannot control the death of a loved one. I cannot control this, but what can I do? I first am going to move to acceptance. It might involve grieving some losses. I've talked about this before, but I had to grieve a lot when this happened. I don't know about you all, but I had a lot of plans for this summer, and they weren't just like, you know, vacations and stuff, although that was in the works. I had an idea of what my life was going to look like. I had an idea of how I was going to be spending time with people. I had done things and set things up, And I was really sad that that was not going to happen. And I had to actually feel that. I had to feel those feelings. I had to name them. I had to manage those emotions. And I still do sometimes. Like my brother came over last night and I wanted to hug him and I wanted to, and we couldn't do things the way we used to do it. And I had a moment of grief and loss. I need to accept over and over for as long as it takes that I'm in a current crisis. It could be COVID-19. It could be that I'm burnt out at work. Am I accepting that as a crisis? I'm burnt out. I need to mourn that loss. I need to feel those feelings and I need to keep moving forward with my goals to change it while knowing that I'm going to have to feel loss sometimes, right? I'm going to accept that there will be periods and periods of discomfort as I work through this new plan. Say that with me again, folks. I'm going to accept that there will be periods of discomfort and sometimes crisis, sometimes reliving the crisis over and over as I work toward a new plan. And I need to know that going in, and that's a part of taking that crisis to clarity. We accept that we're going to have some discomfort and we move forward anyway. We want to commit to living in accordance with our true values. What are we going to do? We're going to define those values, and we're going to do an exercise today that's going to help you do that. We're going to set goals toward those values. We're going to specify actions to achieve our goals. Okay, we're going to get specific, right? We're also going to identify some fears and behaviors that keep us from reaching goals. We don't always like to do that work, but if we don't, we sometimes run into our worst enemy, which can be ourselves. So we're going to do a little bit of that. Then we're going to talk about ways we can work through those fears. And last but absolutely not least, we have to take action, right? Action is the antidote to despair. Doing things, moving forward when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling out of control, is one of the most healthy things we can do. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but they did studies on 9/11 survivors, those who were trapped in those buildings when 9/11 went down. Now, talk about a crisis. Their world changed in a day. Our whole world changed in that day. They did studies and followed up with them on their stress responses after 9/11, and they found that those who had the ability and willingness to physically run away from the building as it was going and escape had far better outcomes from post-traumatic stress than those who were forced to freeze in place. And that they specify that, again, our physiology needs us to physically work out that anxiety, that if we're able to act in a crisis, that it triggers those responses of healing. So think about that. If you sit and wallow in these feelings of fear, of anxiety, of anger, I'm mad that this happened, and you're going to stay there, it's going to have a big impact on your body, on your stress response. So choosing action and doing things despite our feelings is really the secret to overcoming a lot of this. So what's going to happen when we do this? We're going to rediscover our meaning and purpose in life through crisis, okay? We're going to increase our opportunities in work, family, and self-life that are going to bring us greater growth and joy and purpose. So we're going to just exponentially take this crisis and say, not today, crisis. I'm actually going to grow in this time, and I'm going to rock this, and I'm going to be even better for when another crisis comes around. So we're also going to I'm going to give you a mechanism for returning again and again to your identified values. Coming back to center and creating space in your life to return again and again to what you think is important is an amazing way to ward off stress in a crisis and heal, okay? All right, so how are we gonna do this? This is a place where you guys get out your paper and pen again. And again, I'm looking at my battery here. I opened a window so I could get some light, so hopefully we're okay. How are we going to do this? The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is, before we do the exercise, before we come up with a plan, is I need to talk time with you. Everybody has the same amount of time in a day, but how we spend it, what it means to us in the abstract, and how we handle time and manage time is very unique. It's unique to each one of us, and it's always an emotional thing. Time should be a very practical, concrete thing, but how we manage this and move forward is always based on how we feel about it, right? And don't we see this in our students when they're in crisis and they're late and they come in and they haven't studied and they have anxiety, and their idea of time is bound up in fear and anxiety about failure a lot of times, right? Oh, I didn't study enough, or I didn't do this correctly. I am avoiding this, right? We do it too. So in reclaiming time, I'm going to say this. If you want to make changes in your life and you don't make time to prioritize these changes, it won't happen. And it sounds like a really simple thing to say, but how many people right now, and again, I think we might want to think about this pre-COVID, because we've all been kind of on lockdown now. But pre-COVID-19, how many appointments do you have in a day? How many appointments with students? How many meetings at work? How many mammograms? How many baseball games? How many book clubs? How many A, B, C, D? Put it in the chat. How many appointments in a day or a week do you have? Let's just really think about that. How many family commitments do we have? That we have in-laws, we have holidays, we have all these things. How many of you actually approach your calendar every day or every week, putting your needs, your self-care needs, your time management needs, your professional and personal growth time for you to work on those things? How many of you actually put those in the calendar first? Anybody? Anyone? We don't do it. We let time run us. We let our jobs tell us, and then we plan our lives around that, which that's kind of a necessary evil up to a certain point, correct? We have to eat, we gotta work, we gotta get things on the table. If you put yourself first, it requires two things. You have to reclaim your time. And how do you do that? I told you this in other trainings, but the best thing that I've ever done for myself is take myself out, make a monthly appointment. Now, in the beginning, I had to do this 2 times a month, okay, to really get myself together, 2 times a month for an hour or more. I always blocked off 2 hours just in case. Make a monthly meeting with you. Sit down, write it on your paper right now. I will make a monthly meeting with myself, and I will make that meeting go out 12 months. Do you understand? So nobody gets that time. That time is yours. Go somewhere where you can be not interrupted and you can relax. I like to go to a coffee shop. I like to be out of my house because it just gives me a fresh, go where you feel most comfortable and you will not be interrupted. I'm not judging. Go to the Independent Ale House in Rapid City, South Dakota, and get a peanut butter porter and a Bob's Popper pizza. That's 2 of the best things in the world. No judgment here. But go somewhere, just you, with your journal, with your piece of paper, with these questions on it, with your calendar, with your computer, with something that you're going to sit down and intentionally make time to work on your values and your goals, okay? Which I'm going to show you a couple methods on how to do this. Once you figure this out, you're going to take time in this meeting with you to review your values. Have they shifted as a result of this crisis? Do you have greater emphasis on some of the values like family because of things that have happened, or work? You're going to review then and modify your goals that you use to reach those when I'm in our exercise, which we're going to do next. And then you're going to carve out more time. And you're going to look at your calendar at your monthly meeting, and you're going to go out another month past that 12 month, or you're going to look at the next 12 months and you're going to say, do I need more time to work on these goals than I allotted for myself? And you're going to add that time in, and you're going to do that, and you're going to be ruthless, because if you don't put your own self first, none of this will happen. You are responsible. You have the power and privilege to do this. You have to make sure that you pencil in and reclaim the opportunity to carry it out, okay? You want to approach your goals and values from a management approach. Now, what do I mean by this? Management means when we look at problems or we look at crisis or we look at issues in our lives that are sometimes hard. I'm going to give you an example from couples therapy. This is one of my favorite things I talk to couples about. 76% of problems that couples have in a relationship will never be solved. They will never be solved. You can never have a definitive solution, meaning, okay, here's our solution to this. We agree on it. Let's move forward. We never have to talk about this again. But I'm telling you, like 100% of the couples I work with think that every problem can be solved. Okay. So it's about managing expectations with this. 76% of the problems or crisis or things that we need to do, we need to commit to managing on a regular basis. And I'll give you an example again, back to the couples. A lot of couples have problems with money between the two of them. One person has a spender, one person is a saver, one person thinks we should budget this much, the other person thinks they should budget this much. So they approach problems thinking like, if I just argue enough and convince him, like we're gonna solve this problem or we're gonna have a perfect agreement on it. But in reality, you have to come together as a couple and say, we disagree about this, so we're going to have a plan that compromises. Neither one of us are going to feel like it's totally solved, and we're going to adhere to it out of respect to each other. And then we're going to manage this problem, meaning every month or so, we're going to be like, how's this working? Are you okay with this? Let's go with this. You're still going to devote some time to that or manage it over time. But guess what? If you do that, the conflict goes away and it takes less and less energy to manage it over time, but you're still revisiting it. Same with your values and goals. You do not give up meeting with yourself. You do not give up looking at these things and saying, I need to manage this. Is it changed? Do I need a lot more time or less time? Is this working for me? So commit to managing this as something over your lifetime, okay? Stay with me, guys. Power's not back on yet. We got a little bit more time here. We're gonna get ready to do our questionnaire. So what I would like you to do, guys, is get out a blank piece of paper or flip over the one that you're taking notes on, okay? Because I'm going to ask you to actually take this questionnaire. Now, this is a tool I like to use. And again, with everything I offer you guys, this is meant to be customized to fit you. What this is going to do is I'm going to have you look at the screen, and some of you can already start here. You're going to rate each of these life components on a scale from 1 to 10. 0 to 10. 0 being not important to you at all, and 10 being the most important thing that you can imagine. So I want you to take a moment, just jot down the life component. We've got family, and then jot down the corresponding number next to it. Family, other than romantic relationships or parenting, spending time with family. What does family mean to you? Romantic relationships, this is your marriage, your spouse. Then we switch specifically to parenting. Friends and social life, work. Education and training means really higher learning. Are you wanting to learn more, go further, think about different ways or different approaches in your work? And how do we do that? And then recreation and fun, spirituality and religion, citizenship and community life or community work or volunteering. And then last but certainly not least is your self-care or what you feel like is self-care. And as I'm blabbering on, please take this quiz. I'm going to give you just a few minutes. One thing I want to say as we're taking this quiz is there's a couple things that you might need to add to this list. One I can think of right now is sobriety. You know, many of you are struggling with staying sober or something like therapy. Maybe therapy is a life component. Maybe there's some trauma that you want to work through and that you want to prioritize in this way. Healing from past hurts. Maybe there's something that's kind of a subset of this that you want to make something really important. Again, we're drilling down on our values. What is that? Maybe you love animals and you don't have kiddos, but you have animals that you want to spend more time with. Maybe that falls under self-care. Maybe that falls under parenting. I don't know. Or getting a dog for the very first time. So I hope that we love the dog like one of our kids. But our kids have told me they're going to take care of it. They're going to do everything. But don't worry, I don't believe them a bit. I know I'm going to have to do almost all of it, but it's really cute though. It's very tiny, so we'll hope that happens. And hopefully it'll be stress relief for us around here. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys finish this up. Don't overthink it. And again, you're going to revisit this list, and or even better, you will create this list for yourself. So hold on to this piece of paper, because you can even type up something fancy if that's what you do. You can even email me and I can send you this slide. You can maybe you can copy and paste it, or Kim can. You want to make your own valued living questionnaire, because you will, in those monthly meetings, revisit this list and see, do I need to add to this? Have the numbers changed? And do the numbers then reflect how I'm spending my time? Okay, so I'm gonna scroll through. Does everybody, Andrew, have you finished? He's still thinking? Okay, I'm using Andrew because I can see him. I was trying to give him to nod to me so I could see. Is everybody had enough time to kind of flick through this a little bit? Now, again, you're right. You maybe have never been asked these questions before, so you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I feel about that. How do I? Take your time. If you don't get all the way through it now, you're going to go at your monthly meeting, right? Everybody's doing this, so I don't have to worry about you getting it finished, correct? Okay. So we're going to move on in the spirit of time to the next portion of this. Then what you do at your monthly meeting is you take these questions, which this is your committed action exercise. What did we say about action? It's the doing of things that change your feelings about things. So even if I'm annoyed with my husband and he's driving me crazy, I'm going to do nice things for him, and it's going to evoke a response in him that's positive back, and then my feelings toward him might change. Okay, that's like an example of how we use committed action, right? So you're going to take your list and you're going to look at each component, and you're going to say, a component of my life that I value is, take your top 3 for now, or let's just take 1 to practice. I recommend in your meeting with yourself that you take your top 3 and analyze how I'm going to do it, and work on your top 3 and get a good plan going. And then once you've got a plan to address those top 3 and you're doing the things that you committed to doing, go back to your list and work on the other numbers below. Does that make sense? So and then your intention for this component is to, and you're going to define that. And so I'm going to go to my next slide because I did a little example here. A component of my life that I value is family. Now, the first thing I want to say about this is my intention for this component is spending more time each week doing fun things together. That my love language is quality time. So I like to feel love and express love by spending time with people and laughing and just enjoying them, and I'm curious about them and having fun, okay? So the action steps, and I gotta move my chat box over here so I can, the actions that I am willing to take to, again, this is the goals that I'm setting to live out and make sure I'm expressing my values, are 1 hour, one-on-one with each child, okay, per week. Now, imagine, how many of you have 6 kids? That might be a little less doable. I don't know. I have 3 children, and that's a little bit tough. Family dinner 4 times per week, no matter what. So, and I'm going to reclaim 1 holiday. So let me break this down for you. The first thing I want to say is this. How many of you, I largely say, have 8s, 9s, and 10s on family? You guys are probably very big on family. And then I want you to think about, compared to work, compared to other people's obligations, compared to sports, compared to everything else, are you spending the amount of time doing life-giving things with your family that actually expresses that number? Are you at an 8? in the way that you are wanting to be with your family. Most of us are not in any of these. So this is that part, and the goal of this exercise is to call that to our attention and give us a roadmap to reclaim this back. So let's break down these committed actions. What do I have to do if I'm committing 1 hour one-on-one with each child per week? Then I have to go in my weekly meeting and I have to plan out probably for 12 months, I recommend, because if you don't stake that claim like a gold miner, your boss is going to stake out that time, your in-laws are going to stake out that time, your baseball team is going to stake out that time. You need to go through your calendar and mark off that 1 hour a week and have some sort of plan on what you're going to do. Now, what I do, we have donut Saturdays. So on Saturdays, and pre-COVID, we would go to like Jerry's Cakes and Shakes, and I would take one kid with me, and we'd go and have donuts, and it was just an hour a time, and get coffee and hot chocolate, and we sat and spent time together and brought donuts back for the rest of the family. It doesn't have to be an hour either. 30 minutes is amazing. 15 minutes is amazing. Start small if this is a big change. Family dinner 4 times a week, you have to plan for that. That goes in your monthly meeting. What am I going to do? How am I going to make sure that gets on my calendar? Again, we're taking action so that we feel less anxious in a crisis, and that we're living our values and we're improving meaning and purpose in our life. Reclaiming a holiday, what does that mean? That means that I really love spending time with just my own family, and because we all have in-laws and outlaws and step families, holidays were getting so crazy. We were spending all this time driving from one to another to racing around. It became like one of the most stressful times in my life, and I just had to have a nice talk with myself and say, what do you want for your family and your holidays? And talk to my husband, what would you like? Well, I would just like to feel less stressed out. I would like to wake up in my own bed on Christmas morning and have, have coffee and watch my kids open presents and just spend some time. And so I had to make that happen. And believe me, it was painful. It was painful for me to talk to my in-laws about it. It was painful for me to do it. But let me just tell you something. We're going strong now on 8 years of it, and it's amazing. And it's ours now. So you can do this, right? Okay. Enough of my soapbox about reclaiming holidays. Okay, just a quick review. I'm gonna go back up to the valued living questionnaire. Monthly meeting with yourself, review your values. If you need to add or change these, you're gonna do that. You're going to look at how much you value this, and you're going to say to yourself, is how much I value this reflected in the amount of time I'm giving to this in my life? Okay, and then you're going to do goals and come up with goals that match how much you believe and want to express and live this. And you're going to break it down into, I value this, my intention is to spend more time, and then you're going to break down how you spend time. Okay, so another example of intention, it doesn't always have to be time. It could be something like, for example, with self-care, it could be, I'm going to get a massage every month. Okay, perfect. What do you need to do that? Do you need to earn a little more money? Do you need to find a good masseuse? What do you need to do in those committed actions to make it happen? Just a bit of a review if it's confusing. Okay. So I want to bring up to you guys the life purpose visualization, because it's another thing we can do to deepen our goal setting. I talked to you guys about the self-care apps of Calm and Insight Timer, and talked about meditating and actually calming our body down. We've talked about breathing. We've talked about putting ourselves in a place of less stress while we're making these decisions. And this is a really cool idea. One, if you're a visual person, you can take these values and you can make a board, a visualization board, which I've given you a little of example here. It's kind of a cartoon example. Make it your own. If you're a visual person and like to see it is to do it, spend time creatively cutting things out. What do I want to do? I want to do a vacation. I value family. Take your top 5 from your valued living questionnaire and visually represent them on a board and put your goals underneath them, right? And then have it hanging up somewhere, and then make sure you take a picture of it in your phone so you can have it to look at when you want some inspiration, right? And maybe your meeting with yourself becomes creating this visualization board as well. Who knows? Make it your own, just do it, okay? One thing that you can do to deepen this practice is writing down, and you can do this with your students. This is a really cool thing to do with your students. You could even create a worksheet around this and have this be like a two-step assignment for those students who you see just really crisis-oriented, really not big picture their lives about how getting their education and furthering that would help them. This could be an awesome exercise, and do it for yourself. Write down on paper, imagine if you woke up tomorrow, in the business we call this the miracle question. If you woke up tomorrow and everything was exactly how you wanted it to be, a miracle had occurred and there was a magic wand, right? What would your life look like? And get detailed. Where are you living and working? Who are you with? Who's sharing your life with you? What activities make up your actual day? Like, what does your typical day look like? I wake up, I slide out of my bed and my fireplace is roaring in my mountain hideaway, and I have a green matcha shake, even if you've never drank that before, and I do yoga for an hour. And I mean, really, really like go big on this, okay? But drill down on how your life would be. Record, then you want to get it written down pretty well. And like those of you who are doing English or writing with students, you could have them visualize and do an art expression and then have them write it down really specifically so it's ready for them to read out loud and record. So have it edited, have them put colorful, descriptive language, make sure they're very specific about it. Then you want them to use their phone, their voice recorder, and read what their life looks like and read it as if it's in the present moment. So I am a CNA and I wake up every morning thinking about my clients, and I live in a nice house that I can afford, and whatever it is for them, and have them record it in their own voice and have them listen to it regularly. And another emotional regulation technique for the classroom is if that same student comes in and is struggling or has failed a test or is just down or they've had crisis in their lives, because they will have crisis, right? You can say, hey, let's listen to your life purpose recording. Let's listen to it together. Or if they don't want to share, say, you know what, why don't you listen to your life purpose recording in the corner over here for 5 minutes while I finish with the student, and then let's get back together and talk. And then when you get back together with that student, you say, what did you get reminded of? What's the big picture? What are you working toward? You can do this, right? So again, it's powerful for you, and it could be something you could adapt in the classroom. Okay, guys, so we're winding down, and I want to get time for the chat, but I wanted to, this is the time where Kim is going to put up 2 links in the chat that are really cool, and maybe you guys have heard of this. Headspace is another app that is a meditation app. This is so awesome for 2 reasons. One, they are offering a free subscription, which this is normally $12.99 a month, for educators right now. How cool is this? Okay, practice what you preach. You can get in here, you can get around in here. The links to sign up for it, Kim is going to post in the chat. And they are also offering a free 1-year premium subscription to this for anybody who's been recently unemployed. So how many of your students have been unemployed? How many of them could you, now that you have this app and they have an opportunity to have this app, could you get in there and dig around and find something good and send it out on your Zoom? Could you have a Zoom meditation together with your students? And I want you to get into this app and see what meditation is. It really is healing for their crisis brains. You can even filter the type of meditation to be calming, to be motivational, to be a body scan, to how you get in touch and relax progressively. Doing a body scan before a test can increase test scores. Did you know that? They can get really relaxed. Get in here and get creative. This is an awesome gift for you. And if you want to, I want you guys to send me an email. Here's my and tell me how you're using this, or even just tell me if you did it and you like this app. I don't recommend this app very often because the people I work with usually don't have money to access it. But if you have a chance to for free, how cool is that? So let me know if you like it. Okay, guys, wrapping up, I want to say this. We got through it. My computer did not die. We took a crisis. We went for it anyway. Thank you for bearing with me. This time and the times to come are all times for us to be reminded of what's most important. And I hope that you'll take some of these things. I would love to hear if you stick to the monthly meeting and how it's going. And I would just want to say too, again, I have had an amazing time doing this three-part series. I wish I could see you in person. I love what you're doing in the world. If you have questions or if your agency wants to work on doing some trainings, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. And I'm going to check the chat now. So I want to be respectful of the time and see if we've got questions. Put them in the chat. Let me see if I can do this. Kim, did I do it correctly? I always do this. I always click on the people. Okay, Kim's got the links in the chat. And let's go up here. I'm going to scroll all the way up and see. First thing I asked you guys is, what did you learn? What have been some silver linings? Steph Ritberger says she learned how to use oil paints and learned a bunch about art. How cool is that? I'm learning a bunch of stuff like that too, Steph. That's cool. Not having to see people. Royce Miller. Are you an introvert, Royce? I actually have loved that being freed from that expectation from have to be and do everything. And I'm not an introvert, but I have enjoyed it. Kim said it's really simplified our family life. I love that. Really, really, crisis is an opportunity to drill down on what we find most important and live a simple life. I've enjoyed a slower pace. Lots of work outside. Royce, I'm with you. Introverts are uniting all over with this, right? And blessed that people are not sick. Yeah. Andrew says he's learning to appreciate the simple freedoms and things we take for granted. Agreed. Jennifer Wegeman says it causes us to look at what we had and how easy it is to be taken away. 100%. I absolutely agree. Kim Olson, the resident introvert, says she's been preparing her whole life for isolation. She's a total success at it. My husband says the same thing. He's an introverted engineer, so he's like, I've been social distancing forever. It's awesome. And then Brenda says that she's grateful to spend more time with her husband and learn much from each other. I think that's really true, Brenda. Many of my clients and I myself find our marriages actually really improve during this time. And I think it is that proximity of spending time together and learning how to be together and enjoy each other's company, because I think we were really fractured before, really spending time together in kind of chopped up increments. But Kim's husband's working a lot. Factors of resilience, the capacity to make realistic plans and stick to them. Let's see, John Anderson says the benefits of knowing when and not to persist extend not only to the outcomes of a decision, but the effects of the individual who made it. Following a year-long study of adolescence, some researchers concluded that those who can disengage from unattainable goals enjoy better well-being. Awesome. I might steal that, John. It's very true. We have to be realistic when we make goals, and we have to help our students be realistic, like we talked about last time, without, stealing their thunder, keeping it down to what they can control and giving them wins, right? Because they have a lot of losses. So I love that, John. Awesome. Okay, guys. And I'm going to sign off now unless there's any more questions. As a reminder, please email me. I am always open to help if you guys have questions or need any of the materials that we've went over. And I hope I get to work with you guys in the future. And again, so proud of what you're doing in the world, working with the most vulnerable. And I just appreciated it, and I appreciate you. So you guys take good care. I'm gonna sign off, and so glad nothing went off beforehand here, so I'm glad. Thanks, guys. You guys take good care.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you everyone for attending today. Watch your email for more information for upcoming training events.